Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 28th, 2019 Seattle School Board Legislative Meeting. As we begin, we would like to recognize and honor the First Peoples of the Puget Sound Territories by acknowledging that we are on the land of the Coastal Salish tribes. Roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Present.
Director Mack,
Present.
Director Pinkham,
Present.
Director Harris.
Present. And Directors DeWolf and Geary are on much earned and well-needed vacation. For those that would like to, please stand. Pledge of Allegiance. Since we haven't started back to school yet, we have no student performances. Madam Superintendent, the floor is yours. Boom.
Well, good evening. Thanks for, it's good to have you guys back after a good relaxing break, right? So before I start this evening, I just really want to give a shout out and thank Ronald Boy for stepping into, if he were here, stepping into be the interim chief legal counsel over the summer. He's provided great leadership and support to the team over the last few months, and I really appreciate his wisdom and compassion for students. As we all know, he did some deep work with young people on development of the dress code policy, and just has really been helpful throughout this transition. His focus on students really is amazing, and we're so lucky to have him working for our students. So thank you, Ronald. My comments this year during the board meetings will be tied to our work with our new BOLD strategic plan. And I really do want to thank, again, our community and staff that we have a 5-year strategic plan that is focused on serving students furthest from educational justice with a laser-like focus and emphasis on African American males and their excellence. This plan is about changing adult behaviors and our systems to ensure that all students see their individual excellence. As I'm sure you have heard me say, there are no broken students, there are only broken systems. And it is on all of us to create a system where all students thrive. This year, as you know, we will focus on 3 goals in the strategic plan. We're aligning our staffing and our fiscal resources to ensure that all students are reading by 3rd grade. Each student enters the schoolhouse and classroom feeling welcomed, a sense of belonging and feeling loved. And our educators have the belief that each student will be successful in the classroom. As you also know, we launched Seattle Super Readers last June. We provided 10 books for all K-3 students at 13 schools to take home for the summer, with the hope that each student and family would read for at least 20 minutes per day. We kind of push this out on all kinds of channels, and we know that if students are reading 20 minutes a day, that they will be prepared and ready to step into their grade without any summer loss. This summer, I put on my cape and I took to reading across the city. I shared a story at Summer Staircase with our partners from Team Read. I read to Jumpstart students at Wing Luke Elementary. I visited with students and our partners at Seattle Libraries. I delivered a message to the students at a Read-A-Rama. So just a lot of great activities out there. And I do want to thank our partners in this work. MT from Seattle Library shared the space with me at Beacon Hill Library, but as you see, he forgot his cape that day. I shared our work with Urban League and other partners that they convened. They're excited about our work, and they're ready to roll up their sleeves and help us out with the big lift that we have. I also visited with CSEC, and they are excited to learn more about our initiatives and how we're doing the work. This Seattle Super Reader, we have banners going out to every elementary school across the district just to remind people as they walk in that it is important to be a Seattle Super Reader. This summer, school leaders dove into the work. Their week during SLI started with a day-long session on foundational coursework that is grounded in racial equity. The Student Advisory Board also met with our school leaders to share their work and their ideas to create welcoming environments for students. Once again, these young leaders showed how brave and how smart they are. They spoke to all 250 plus school leaders and then broke into smaller conversations with their principals, and they were really powerful conversations, and I know one that the school leaders also enjoyed having. And because school leaders seem to be a competitive group, we finished the week-long session with a rock, paper, scissors championship. It was a great week of learning that was both serious about the hard work ahead of us and a fun time to build relationship with colleagues. We are so fortunate to have this group of leaders, and I just want to thank the team that organized and put the School Leaders Institute, or SLI, together. It was really we had great feedback from principals. As I mentioned, school leaders had a week-long session rooted in equity. New to the profession teachers also spent time learning this summer. Their training mirrored those SLI trainings. They learned what it takes to be a teacher in Seattle. Their trainings were grounded in racial equity as well. I had the privilege to attend the Academy for Rising Educators Social at Seattle University, and I really can't wait to see these young adults in our classrooms as instructors. Thank you to Seattle colleges and to the city for this partnership. This program's targeted at high school students in their junior and senior years who have an interest in the teaching profession. The program provides a pathway for recently graduated high school students to attend Seattle Central College and earn their Associate of Arts degree. And while earning those degrees, students can choose to work for Seattle Public Schools as a paraeducator, classroom assistant, earning a salary and full benefits while they're in school. Once students complete their AA degree, they enter Seattle Public Schools Class to Cert program to begin earning their BA and a teaching certificate with the goal of returning to the classroom to serve and make a meaningful impact in their home communities. This program provides a supported pathway to a career in education, advancing racial equity in our institutions, and providing success for our students. So it is a long-term view of diversifying our workforce, which you know is a priority in our strategic plan. So it's really great work, and it was fun seeing all those students. And finally, I'm on to Twitter, so feel free to connect with all these areas and stay engaged with efforts that are coming out from the district. So thank you.
Okay, board committee reports. Director Mack, are you ready for ops? And Director Pinkham for A&F? And Director Burke, will you be giving the CNI report? And Director Gary's absence? There you go. Thank you.
Well, good evening. We did have a ops meeting since the last board meeting, which was full, and I think we went a half an hour late. I apologize for that happening. I try to do our best to get everything through, but we had a lot of important things to talk about, including we had a great conversation around policy 6900 and 6901. 6900 is a facilities master plan policy that we don't have in place yet, that we're looking to get into place, and then retain 6901, which is levy planning. And it was a robust conversation with the drafts in place. Two kind of fundamental things that came forward from the committee were the importance of including the technology planning into the levy policy, which is the 6901, as well as ensuring that 6900 gets a full racial equity analysis on it. So we'll be getting updates at the next meeting about where we're at in the process of those two things. We got some special attention items around updates for the Playground Redevelopment Fund. The policy 3208, sexual harassment annual report, which is an annual report that comes to ops regarding the Title IX requirements for sexual harassment. The actual report didn't come. There's a new task force being formed, so we kind of got an update about what's happening with that, and the actual report will be coming next ops meeting. It's been added to the agenda for then. We also got updates on where we're at in the process of doing recruitment around the Capacity Enrollment and Facilities Master Planning Advisory Committee, as well as the task force. And in short, both of those are moving forward. We're working on getting the notifications out and facilitators, and et cetera. So those are moving forward, and you'll be seeing those soon. Next meeting is already next Thursday because of timing of calendars with the summer and so forth. So we've got a number of construction bars that are coming forward. 10 of them, I think, maybe even more. Lots of construction activity happened over the summer, so that makes a lot of sense. The special attention items I already mentioned, the sexual harassment annual report. We're also going to get a start of schools update around operations, including an update on the enrollment numbers and that compared to projections, et cetera. So we'll kind of see where we're at the first day of school. And I think we'll probably get an update on how transportation seems to be going, et cetera, those sorts of things. We are also getting an update on the process and timeline for the 2020-21 student boundary changes and student assignment plan, what's happening in terms of community engagement, what things are going on. And we have a work session now that's scheduled for September 25th on that topic, a board work session here in this room. And finally, I am super excited about the ribbon cuttings that are happening. We have 2 of them tomorrow and 2 on Tuesday. And this is one of those really exciting, wonderful celebrations of amazing work that our staff and communities do in support of students. And can't wait to be there at Magnolia tomorrow and Ingram. And then Tuesday is Queen Anne and Lincoln. So you can find the agendas for the ops online, I believe, which also includes information about other meetings like the BEX BTA Oversight Committee meetings and so forth. So, oh, and then just a quick update on legislative stuff. Legislative Assembly for WASDA is coming up in 3 weeks or something. And I believe that Director Geary is going as well. So.
Director Pinkham, A&F, Audit and Finance.
Thank you very much. Our last Audit and Finance meeting was this past Monday, August 19th. Grateful that all of our members were able to join. I'm going to just jump first to the special attention items that we had there was regarding some of our contracts that are going over the $250K. A lot of it was just more for us for compliance. We had to, yes, we need to proceed with these. We don't have much choice, but it's again just a notification for us. Others were just about contracts that we have where either some positions weren't filled, do we do the temporary or do we seek for hire? So appreciate our people keeping us posted of when we exceed those $250K. The 5 firearms that we discussed will be introduced today, and appreciate again our committee members that really had some good questions, in particular with Gates First Data Infrastructure. They were asking questions about student privacy and what's going to happen there, and we got some good feedback on that, and some good discussion I think will possibly continue today as well that some of the other board members may have. The Amazon Future Grant, with their FIRST Robotics, glad to see we're actually expanding that because it did. FIRST Robotics was in some of our schools, but now being able to hopefully to offer that to more of our lower income, the schools that want to target it. Yes, Washington FIRST Robotics, yes. First Washington, whichever way it goes, yeah. Yes, and then also a science grant that was applied for, and there's some questions that the board had as far as the timing when that grant was submitted. The 2019 Best Preliminary Award. This looks like a past 5 years we've had this grant, and hopefully we can continue. And this year it looks like we'll exceed the $250K. And the teacher diversity contract, I think you touched on some of those things that we're looking at and what we're doing there. It's great to see that I hope that's one thing I always kind of dream, that we grow our own and get our students that are interested in teaching and get them in there and provide that direction for them. So it's good that Seattle Central, what they're able to do and get them moving forward there. So I appreciate that. Our next regular ANF meeting will be September 9th, but prior to that, we will have our quarterly audit and finance meeting on September 3rd. So hopefully people that want to make it there, and you'll see the agendas posted when they're available. Katsiaya, thank you.
Thank you. Director Burke, can you step in for Director Geary, the Chair of Curriculum and Instruction?
Absolutely. So, Curriculum Instruction Policy Committee met last week, Tuesday, August 20th. Topics that were covered, some of them you'll see here. The board action report, which also came through ANF around the Amazon Engineer grant update, the First Washington. The other thing that came forward that is up for intro is the annual approval of schools, the CSIPs. We, as a board, talk a lot about the continuous school improvement plans, and so I just want to continue to elevate that as a governance tool, as a public transparency tool, as a vehicle for essentially school leaders, families, educators, administration to find common voice, common alignment. So it did come through committee with a request to have a little bit longer review time, so we'll discuss that when it's introduced. We had special attention items, an annual assessment report that talked about the negotiated assessment calendar for the upcoming year and other work that's being done in assessments, and a brief advanced learning update as well. We talked about the Policy 2015 and instructional materials adoption policy, and then also some of the specific adoptions that have already taken place, implementation to date on the science materials, and since time immemorial. There were a couple of questions that came up, and there were some replies, some feedback from that in the Friday memo. So looking forward, next meeting is whatever the next Tuesday is. I don't have the date in front of me, but we'll be doing an adoption update on the Spanish adoption, which is in progress, as compared to something that's already been done. Thank you. September 10th, much appreciated. There'll be an updated discussion on advanced learning and the advanced learning task force. And then the intention is to bring policy 2015, the instructional materials adoption policy, forward. That has been a very heavy lift, a lot of policy and procedure work. So I encourage my colleagues in the public to take a close look at that and let us know if there's things that we feel like we missed. We're also going to be talking about anti-racism policy that's underway, doesn't have a number yet. And we're looking at policy 2023, which is around instructional technology. We have a standing item to discuss the strategic plan that also will be an opportunity to touch on some of the things that Superintendent Juneau mentioned. That's it.
Okay, well, the executive committee met last week on August 21st, and we spoke about several issues. We talked about an amendment to Superintendent Juneau's contract, and you'll see that on the agenda this evening. We spoke about the extension of the contract with Durham School Services, and I believe Chief Podesta will be presenting on that as well this evening. Durham has stepped in to assist us, and we're mighty appreciative of that. And I might add that work still continues on the think tank as far as alternative solutions that has been very community-based and driven. We talked about the District 7 appointment process. We talked about oversight work sessions for the year 2019-20. And it gets a little awkward when there's going to be a transition of the board, and the present board sets the agenda for the next board, but we're trying to be sensitive to that. And executive committee meetings are open, and we've seen some folks that will be stepping up at those meetings, and we highly encourage that attendance. We talked about the 1920 school year calendar. There was one day that was mistaken on a bar. However, all of our outward-facing communication had the correct information, so that was determined to be a Scrivener's error and an amendment. We talked about the ITAC Advisory Committee, and the annual report, and the fact that the first-year terms are expiring, and Director Burke and I and Chief Berge and members of the technology department met and vetted candidates, and we're very excited for the new candidates to step up, and huge thanks to those that served and are not continuing. And we did approve some continuing terms, re-upping, if you will. Been lucky enough to attend several of those meetings, partial meetings, and I'm really impressed at the level of dialogue and input. And we can only do better when we have more communication, more outside experts helping us out. And again, those are public meetings, and you're welcome to come sit and learn. Board policy 1400, meeting conduct, order of business, quorums, etc. That's the policy that sets our start time at 4:15, and then we have these wonderfully awkward gaps until public testimony starts at 5:30. It is not lost on us that perhaps we need to tinker with the timing of these meetings. And it's not lost on us that there are a number of folks that continually testify. And in order to keep these meetings from not lasting until the lights go out at midnight, we're thinking in terms of potentially, putting students first, if in fact the students have written their own comments, as opposed to others for them. Potentially slotting some strategic plan or race and equity slots out of that 20. To be continued. It's a rich conversation, and it's probably one that the board in December will want to take up. There are so many moving pieces to changing a policy like this, but know that we recognize the issues and the transparency issues and the difficulty of coming down to the John Stanford Center during rush hour. Many of us live that life as well. And the other issue is to have our very capable staff here to advise us when they've been here all day. So, to be continued. If you have thoughts, please let us hear from you. And we talked some about community engagement, public affairs, and then we ran out of time. And at 10 o'clock, everybody gets up and leaves. So, to be continued. We have reached the consent agenda portion of our agenda. May I have a motion for said consent agenda, please?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Does anyone have any items that they would like to remove from said consent agenda? Speak now or forever. Director Pinkham.
I think, again, as kind of what we do when we have someone that in public testimony that lists they have something they want to address on the consent agenda, and we do have someone that says they want to address the consent agenda number 1 from public testimony. So I would request to remove number 1 from the consent agenda.
Okay. That's 6 meeting minutes approval. Do we have anything clearer than that, kind sir?
Other than what's on the public testimony list, that's all I have.
Okay, it's your right. Do I have a motion to pass the consent agenda as amended?
I move approval of the consent agenda as amended with item number 1 removed.
I second.
All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for that. And we will move item number 1 on the consent agenda to action item number 1. And I'm sure y'all will remind me if I forget, because we're a collaborative board. Okay, We have 50 minutes before we start public testimony. As many folks know, we had a historic vote last night, and this board will be going into a closed session. So this meeting will be recessed so that our staff can advise us on labor negotiations. We will be back 5:30 on the dot. Thank you so much.
Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
Okay, we are out of recess, and we will not continue our closed session after this ledge meeting. We were capably advised by our staff. Thank you for your patience. It is 5:30. We are at public testimony. Rules for public testimony are on the screen, and I ask that speakers are respectful of these rules. The board does not take public comments on items related to personnel or individually named staff. I'm assuming that the folks in this room can read and see those rules, so I will dispense with reading them each and every word. I would like to remind you that you have 2-minute speaking time. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light will show up. Please start to conclude your remarks. Thank you very much. Please read the speakers 3 at a time. Thank you.
First up, we have Alex Zimmerman, followed by Chris Jackins, and then Sabrina Burr.
Microphone not working, so you will start from beginning. You will come again? Can I speak again? No? Okay. Sieg Heil, my dirty Nazi pig. Come Nazi pig with animal farm. I Gestapo, anti-Semite, and killer. My name Alex Zimmerman. I want to speak about something what has happened before, and this is an agenda right now, about board meeting. Yeah, you cut me many times right now too. So situation right now very simple. You cannot change me. I'm too old and too stupid. But you did this for 30 years with 2 generations of Seattle children, brainwash them totally. They don't know what this means. U.S. Constitution, freedom of speech, open public act, or 100 decision of city of U.S. court, local, and U.S. Supreme Court. This is a problem what is we have right now. This everything what is Seattle right now start be a #1 fascist city in America with one-party system.
Excuse me, you said you were going to be speaking to consent agenda item number 1, which are the minutes of the meetings. Please direct
Yes,
your
exactly
comments
what is I
to
doing
that
this.
issue,
I
the
did this.
majority of
You
same.
see, you interrupt me again. You acting like a Nazi pig. It's a problem. It's a problem. I don't have my 2 minutes. Exactly what is in agenda number, it's a board meeting from 10th of July. And this is exactly what's happened. You don't give me chance to speak. It's a problem. You cut my 40-minute second right now. Half. What is you talking about? That's exactly what is I told you. You're real Nazi Gestapo pig. Is it you're doing in every meeting. You don't give me a chance to speak my 2 minutes like supposed to be. By law, it rules. You pretend you're American? No, you're a real Nazi pig. That's exactly what's happening here.
My name is Chris Jackins, Box 84063, Seattle 98124. On the bread contract, 3 points. Number 1, a letter from the baking company notes that it has 2 bakeries in Seattle, one less than a half mile from school district headquarters. Number 2, 12 out of 13 of the company's bread products contain calcium propionate, a mold inhibitor. Number 3, why are preservatives needed? The bread is only being baked a few blocks away. Please vote no on this contract. Drop the chemicals. Give students fresh bread instead. On the school name change from Van Asselt at African American Academy to Rising Star at African American Academy. 5 points. Number 1, the name change is intended to reduce confusion between the original Van Asselt and the current site. Number 2, reopening the African American Academy is a better solution. Number 3, the district found one relative of Henry Van Asselt, an early settler associated with the land on which the school was built. The relative was said to have given her assent to the name change. Number 4, I sat through the district's previous renaming of Sharpless School to Augie Croce. District staff at that time found one listing of a Sharpless in the phone book, but that person was not related to the original Sharpless. After the Sharpless renaming, the Sharpless family surfaced in force and threatened legal action. Number 5, so over the span of a couple of decades, the district has gone from finding 0 relatives to finding 1 relative. The district has not yet done proper due diligence. Please vote no. Thank you.
After Sabrina Burr, we will have Vivian Grease, followed by Jonah Randolph and Brian Terry. Vivian?
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. I think once a... Nope. Okay, thank you. Okay. Good evening, board members. My name is Vivian A. Grice. I'm a special education instructional assistant. Focus, grades 3 through 5. Thank you for granting me the opportunity to speak in regards to the school name change at Van Asselt Elementary at African American Academy. It has been an arduous journey, renaming our school with highs and lows. However, the joint efforts of our dedicated community, family, students, and staff, and their vision, including past, present, and future endeavor and goals, are woven into a vast think tank to help solidify our proposed name change, Rising Star Elementary at African American Academy. We are looking forward to starting the 2019-2020 school year with enthusiasm and hope, cheering on our Rising Star students as they enter their new school setting. We will begin with a new vision emboldened by the dreams, hopes, and aspirations inspired by our wonderful family, community members, staff, students, great leaders, and visionaries. We have risen from the ashes as rising star firebirds, facing challenges and moving upward and beyond as we brighten the future of our beloved children, families, staff, and community. Thank you.
Jonah?
Hello, board. My name is Jonah Randolph. I'm a first grade teacher at Van Assel, and I've been teaching there for 5 years. I grew up 2 blocks away from Van Assel. That's where I was born and raised. When I was just a boy, Van Assel was just a field, and we caught garter snakes in that field. So for me, teaching has been about coming home, and it's a full circle, and I feel like I'm not only a teacher, but also a resident of the community. And I'm just here to speak for our attempt to claim a name for ourselves. In many ways, this journey of choosing a name has had us go back through history. We went back so far in our history, we went back to the Duwamish, and we realized that there are so many similarities as we went up. So the treatment of the Duwamish and Henry Van Asselt and what he stood for and how different he was than many other settlers. The way that Van Asselt turned into the story of the African American Academy after that. All these things fit together, and all of them fit together with a certain level of disregard. People who've been disregarded, people who've been moved, people who've been had their name given to them or had situations decided for them. So in this act of naming ourselves, I want you all to know that we are trying in the most genuine way we can with the input of our staff, our families, our kids, and our community to name ourselves. To not only do away with confusion, but also to claim our own right to be who we are. A really, really brief piece of history. And I wish I could tell you all the history that we went over to go through this. We actually have the whole family tree of the Van Asselts. So our Van Asselt that we contacted, I believe her name is Maureen or Marva, she is not the wrong Van Asselt. She is directly related to Henry Van Asselt, and she gave us our permission. So really brief history, the African American Academy was forced to close, essentially, in, I believe, 2009. And Van Asselt School was very happy where they were, and they were told they were not going to move. And so African American Academy was closed, and Van Asselt School was forced to move into that building. And now we want to go ahead and claim a name that belongs to us that wasn't given or wasn't taken or wasn't misconstrued. Thank you.
After Brian Terry, we will have Sabrina Burr.
Good evening. IQ tests have a dark past. Significant racial biases made them a tool for white supremacy. We use an IQ test in our schools today to identify highly capable students. For years now, we have identified white students as highly capable at a rate 20 times that of black students. If we looked, we would see that the IQ test that we use has a 10-to-1 racial bias against black students. But we don't look. We have faced this gross inequity for more than 30 years, and each year chosen to do nothing of consequence to address it, in violation of both WAC 392170035 and District Policy 0030. It seems surprisingly easy for us to overlook the harm this program causes to our black students, as though their lives don't matter. I ask all of you to please consider what it is about our decision-making process that makes it so easy for us to neglect the interests of our black students, what your role is in this process, and what action each of you can take to change our process so that our decisions reflect the interests of all of our students equitably. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you for what you do. I know your job is not easy. I want to talk about the District 7 race. It was supposed to be open and transparent, but it is the most racist thing that I'm seeing. We have bloggers, and they're streaming white supremacy I've seen candidates being lynched in their character, and I'm very disappointed. We have candidates that I understand have relationships with HCC staff, and this process is not transparent. The reason why I did not put my name in the hat was because Elijah's name was in the hat, and both of us did not need to have our name in the hat because she was fully qualified for doing the job. And so I really want you to look at what is going on in the race. There is a lot of white supremacy around this race, and Seattle Public School staff is ingrained in it. So I just want to be open and very clear about what that looks like. There's extreme white supremacy around this, and we need to correct it. District 7 needs a Black voice. Even under Director Patu, the Black voice in South Seattle has not been heard. You have not heard from our families, and there's no trust. And so if you want to serve the Black people in Southeast Seattle, you need to make sure we have somebody who has a relationship with them. On the African American Academy, I understand what that community has gone through for the school, but in Southeast, I had no idea of what was going on, nor has the community been engaged. The community was engaged when it was called the African American Academy, and I don't know why we have to put something up in front of it. The community went through a lot. The African American Academy, it was racist, and they all ended up in South Shore in 2009, changing the dynamics of our school, because then we became a free and reduced lunch school where we weren't before. And I really want you to look at the African American community and see how you're impacting them and how not honoring the name that the community picked, what it does. There's a lot of hurt in our community, and you need to investigate that before you vote on it, and just listen to what happened in a school community who did not reach out to our community.
This concludes the sign-up list for public testimony this evening.
Do we have anyone in the audience that wishes to testify? Is, I believe, the appropriate ask at this time. Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times? Okay, action items. We move back to the consent, board comments. Got myself this time. Who would like to go first? Director Burke, please.
So we're coming off of summer, and in the interest of that, I'll keep comments short. I want to share my gratitude with the SPS team. As I mentioned, the transition from summer back to the school year, the educators get to take a much needed break, but there's lots of things that run full speed all summer long. The capital projects team has been going super intensely to get our 4 schools started that Director Mack had mentioned. We've got 4 ribbon cuttings, 2 of them tomorrow at Magnolia and Ingram, and 2 of them on next week on, I believe, Tuesday at Queen Anne Elementary and Lincoln High School, our brand new Lincoln High School. Super excited about that. So I just want to thank the teams that have been working on that tirelessly, and the start of school folks that are going to make our transition to getting kids' butts in seats, as we like to say, super successful. I also want to share my gratitude with the bargaining teams, Seattle Education Association and Seattle Public Schools. There's another group of people that worked their tushes off this summer to have a clean start of school. I'm super excited about what that has come to, and how the interest-based bargaining process helps us through some of the challenging times, some of the challenging topics, but gets us to a better place together. A special shout out, I know that there's so many people that pass into the organization, through the organization. I wanted to give a special shout out to Michelle Aoki. I'm not very good with titles, so I'm not even sure exactly what her title is, but essentially Director of International language studies schools, something or other. What she taught me about commitment to a program and around language immersion schools and essentially our whole international studies work took me basically from zero to functional. And so I'm really grateful for the passion that she has shown. She's retiring officially September 1st. So I wanted to publicly thank her. I've scheduled 3 community meetings that I'm still waiting for confirmation. These are essentially the 3 community meetings that will complete my term here. September 14th, Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m., Fremont Library. October 12th, 10 a.m. to noon at Greenwood Library. And November 9th, 3 to 5 p.m., also at Greenwood Library. Once I have confirmations, I'll share that with the board office and we'll get it posted on the calendar. Other than that, thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and looking forward to a wonderful start of school.
Director Pinkham and then Director Mack.
Taskalawit, good evening, and Katsialia, thank you. I guess for our next Tuesday and Wednesday, welcome back to school. I do have a new high school student that'll be having to attend some orientation with her next year, but to all students, new and returning, and those that are moving on, like from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school, welcome back, and hope you'll find this year very fulfilling. And as I mentioned, we got some new schools opening up. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it to Ingram High School. I got some UW commitments that's keeping me busy just by basically from 8 to sometimes even after the 5 p.m. end workday. And thank you to all the candidates that were looking for the District 7 position and providing input and your views and perspectives as you're moving forward with that. Thank you to our staff and the SCA people that we were able to find, come to this, with just the work that you've done. I appreciate it that we're at the point that we're at now. I barely have much comments for people today, so I guess I'll take this opportunity to wish my niece and her husband happy anniversary. And also for tomorrow, my sister's birthday as well, so I got to pass those congratulations out. I don't have any community meetings scheduled right now because unfortunately we're also heading into Husky football season, and some of those games are to be determined. So I diligently work around those calendars. So, but once I get them scheduled, you will see them announced. Katsiaga, thank you.
Good evening. I appreciate the thank yous that are thrown out and also the birthday wishes. I'm actually not a good person to remember other people's birthdays, so happy birthday to everybody. But I will do a shout out to my husband, whose birthday was yesterday, and my twins a couple days before. So I'm excited about the new buildings that Director Burke mentioned and the ribbon cuttings that we get to do. Successes in Seattle Public Schools. We've got such a large district, so many people, so many challenges. I really love the wins when they come, and these are some major wins. I know that potentially Rising Star at African American, or the Van Assault at African American, is struggling with some facilities issues, a roofing issue right now, and I'm sure there's some other issues going on across the district, and I know our staff is working hard to try to resolve those. And that every student in our district needs and deserves a quality, safe learning environment. So excited about the ribbon cuttings tomorrow, and excited about school starting next week, having a short break before it starts. So many logistics to go on for the start of school. 54,000 students. I'm hearing that there's some enrollment projections that are maybe above, but we don't know until people show up. So people are still signing up out there, getting all of the transportation things lined up. It's a lot of details, and a lot of teachers and principals and central staff are working really hard to make sure everything is lined up. But I also know that there's often some glitches. And I know my sense is, particularly this year, that there's a commitment inside of this district to be responsive to when glitches are happening and resolve them. So I hope that's what folks are experiencing. I believe that's what the intent is. And I hope that as we move into the start of school, things get, resolved quickly and with compassion. As I mentioned in the ops, we're getting some important updates at the next ops meeting, which is the day after school starts. So we'll be getting enrollment numbers and getting some information there, update on start of schools. And also in response to the testimony around advanced learning, the task force has been doing their work, and that those recommendations will be coming out. There's a lot of work around that going on. We have a work session that's scheduled in September on the 25th. And I do know that there have been changes in identification practices and so forth. No, in the past 5 years, there have been some improvements around the attempts to improve the identification processes. And I do want to push back that there hasn't been anything done, because I do know that there have been some changes made, and there's a lot of conversation about what are the right changes to make in the future. So I appreciate the support of the effort, and I also want to recognize that we are working towards making improvements, and that it is on our minds and in our agendas. I don't have any community meetings set up yet. I was remiss in the last 4 months, maybe 6 months. Things were too busy, but I do commit to getting something set up for September, October, and November, particularly when there are some really hot topics coming up with student assignment and boundaries, and those sorts of things get really heated. And so I will be having a community meeting. I'll get it scheduled, and I'll let you know when it is. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. I hope short and sweet, like sometimes I am. I wanted to point this out. Seattle Met Magazine and our very own head of food services. And if you've eaten his cooking and his tiramisu, it's to die for. And I'm going to teach him lasagna, and he's going to teach me oxtail soup. We've got a deal going on. I do not have community meetings planned as yet, but I will try to make them again at a West Seattle library. I try to rotate them the third Saturday of the month from 3 to 5, unless there's a conflict here. And the next one, you have a 50% chance of getting lasagna. And it's worth it for staff to come, because we're rowdy and you get to see a different perspective, and you all are very much invited. A huge thanks for the lifts that our educators have done in bargaining, and that our staff has done in bargaining. This is the lost summer for these people. And as well, please remember that most of our staff that has been on the bargaining team do that in addition to their 40-hour plus work week. Their families don't see them, and it's really difficult, intense work, and it is so very much appreciated. And if you haven't heard it before, from the bottom of my heart, and this is one of those places where I absolutely will speak on behalf of the board, thank you ever so much, both our staff and the Seattle Education Association. If people come to the table with listening and collaboration, good things happen, and I believe good things did happen. And you will see that on the next board agenda for intro and action. And for those folks that think that the board has some kind of megalomaniacal power that we could reach back in and change something, spare yourself the ugly emails and the blog posts, because that's just not going to happen. This is a bargain that was collaborated on, and I would expect that we will in fact be approving it as is. and thousands of hours went into this. And it's interest-based bargaining. It's not adversarial. That's the difference. And I sound really preachy, and I don't mean to. The other huge thanks is to the Capitol team and the Start of Schools team. And I don't know if folks are aware, I certainly wasn't being out in the seats here prior to the start of school for years and years, that we have a cross-departmental team that works on start of schools issues. And they put together a giant-sized punch list. And we used to say that this building and our departments were hugely siloed. Well, I'm here to tell you, thank you, speak up, hold the mic close, that those silos are falling apart. And that's one of the best things I've ever seen in the last 4 years being here on the dais, and certainly the 15 prior to that. This is a cross-departmental team that works through this punch list. And I think I heard a rumor this morning, actually I heard a quote, that we started with over 100 items and we're down to 10 or 12. Something like that. That's pretty extraordinary when you think of 102 schools and that many folks. So thank you as well for that. And thank you as well to the Seattle PTSAs. It's not just teachers and principals that are in our schools right now getting ready for start of schools. As you know, I do look at the blogs. I do try and keep up as an early warning system. And I see new PTSA blood coming in and a really lovely, what do I want to say, almost mentorship process taking place. And that's a healthy and a beautiful thing as well. And to those parents that are nervous about sending your children to kindergarten or our schools, there's family there for you. You need to reach out and embrace it. And I think PTSA, like the school district, is trying to do a better job of being inclusive and more engaging. And again, those are great things. I do appreciate and have heard loud and clear frustration with the District 7 process. District 7 appointment process. I would say that this is the most transparent process that I've ever seen in living in this state for more than a few decades to fill vacancies. Is it messy? It is. Democracy's messy. But the meetings have been transparent. They've been open. We had an abundance of extraordinary people coming to apply for this vacancies, and I'm so thrilled and proud for that, and I hope that we can figure out other ways to corral that talent. And it does come down to a trust exercise. It's the duty of the board under statute that we are the ones that vote and appoint, and I know that this board director takes it very seriously, and I trust that each of my colleagues does as well. So stay tuned and hang with us, and please be there for the forum at Rainier Beach High School on September 11. Much appreciate. Action items. Let's go to the consent number 1. And Director Pinkham, I believe you found an error, as you do. And these are the minutes that
yeah,
you're
there
moving
was the
forward
July
for approval.
10th official minutes, because we did do something a little bit different that day, that we invited some people to share public testimony before we recess. But after, in this one, it says after board comments, let's see where it says, it's on page 4. It says the meeting recessed at 4:42 p.m. This meeting reconvened at 4:42 p.m. Did we actually do that? Was we? That's what I was thinking. Did we actually? Wait, let's recess and then no. Well, let's get back together and do this. So 4:42 or 4:43 doesn't matter if we.
We're looking for advice here, folks.
Donald Boyd, Senior Assistant
Didn't see
General
that one
Counsel.
coming, did ya?
You know, it sounds like it actually is correct, even though it reads unusually, but I understand that you did a recess and come back in, and that is actually what occurred. I don't think there needs to be a correction.
Is there a way you can make that clearer, I guess? Because it does seem kind of, if someone is to read this, how'd they recess and reconvene at the same time?
I think that you could add some language that there's that board directors changed their mind and reconvened. Be the most accurate, right way to say it.
Would that be considered a Scrivener's addition, sir?
Yes, it just provides a little bit more clarity. It doesn't actually change the actual
And
content.
do we need a formal motion for same?
No, I think that we could just correct it.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda item number 1?
I move approval of the minutes of the July 10th, 2019 budget public hearing, the July 10th, 2019 regular board meeting, the July 15th, 2019 work session, the August 5th, 2019 work session, the August 7th, 2019 board special meeting, and the August 12th, 2019 work session.
I second the motion.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we move to C, action item number 1, approving board policy number 3232, parent, guardian, and student rights and administration of surveys, analysis, or evaluations. This came before CNI June 11 for consideration. Motion, please.
I move that the school board amend board policy number 3232, parent, guardian, and student rights in administration of surveys, analysis, or evaluations as attached to the board action report.
I second the motion.
See Chief Academic Officer Diane DeBacker at the podium. Take it away, please.
Good evening, and thank you, President Harris. Am I on? All right. As you all know, Policy 3232 deals with a very important topic, and that is the privacy of our student data. Because this topic is so important, we've taken a long time to get the language right, as all of you know sitting up there tonight. Along the way, we were pushed by each of you, by our communities, by our own internal staff to get this right, because we know that the rights and the responsibilities of our district to our students were not clear prior to this. The policy that's before you today is strong and represents a collaborative process. We did outreach with our communities, formed an internal working group, and had multiple feedback sessions with the directors and the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. At the recommendation of the committee members, we also moved forward with a superintendent procedure to accompany this policy. That procedure is currently being routed through our district channels. That said, I know that our district directors are interested in knowing the content of that procedure, so I'm going to walk you through a few of the specifics. First, the procedure reaffirms the district's adherence to the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendments, or PPRA, and the guidelines from the U.S. Department of Education regarding the protection of student data privacy. The procedure also addresses the discomfort that some directors had expressed with regards to the PPRA protected category of sex behavior or attitudes. We clarified that this should be interpreted to mean sexual behavior and attitudes in relation to sexual health and behavior. Second, the procedure clarifies when studies are opt-in and when they are opt-out. And we follow this guidance from the U.S. Department of Education and the federal law. Those 8 reasons for those are outlined within the policy. Third, the procedure outlines notification requirements to families. Just this week, a back-to-school notice was sent out to family informing them of this anticipated approval of the policy. We will go back to them with the specifics once we have board approval on this. We'll require that there's hard copy paper options, and then we also will have other sources available, such as through the source or email. And we'll require that the notifications be translated into at least the 5 top languages of our district families. Finally, and I think this is one of the most important, the procedure makes it clear that district staff are responsible for upholding the requirements set forth in this policy. Will require that district staff provide a contact person to track the opt-outs and that we follow best practice in safeguarding signed consent forms for opt-outs or opt-ins. And in any case where consent requirements are unclear, we ask that data collectors consult with district legal counsel, and will communicate this with our principals and our school staff. We anticipate that if you approve Policy 3232 tonight, we'll be able to share the text of the procedures with you at the September Curriculum and Instruction Committee, and that will all be shared with you directors after that. I stand for questions.
Thank you so much. Director Mack?
Since I don't sit on CNI, I don't actually get to hear some of these conversations, and it sounds like it's been very robust and completely engaged. The one thing that I have a big question on is the language in the policy that, and this might also be a question for Mr. Boy, because I'm trying to understand who this actually covers. The policy says specifically that it's blah, 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 required for all third-party research. Sorry, I did the blah, 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 but anyway, it's the second paragraph down. All third-party research. That doesn't encompass when the district itself is doing surveys. And then the accompanying policy number 4280 specifically only covers third-party as well. So all of the things that you just described for student data privacy, excellent, except this, what I'm a little concerned about is that are we really only requiring those things of the third-party research and not our own district? Because that's what the policy says. It very specifically says third-party research, and it doesn't sound like it covers the district. So can I get some clarity? Because despite my support for all of that work that's gone into that, that's a huge thing. If we are not following the same requirements and it's only the third-party people that are having to follow it, that's a problem. So if I can get clarification on that.
Chief Counsel Ronald Boy is coming to the podium.
So when we look at the policy, the paragraph number 2 states that it is the district's position that all third-party receive informed consent. When we look at internal research internal research that covers one of the identified groupings here, where the reveals student information concerning any of the following 8 categories, then we fall into not an informed consent, but a direct notification of a parent's rights to opt out and review the survey. So those are the distinctions.
For clarification, we are requiring that any third-party research notify and parents have to give consent for these 8 things. But our district staff can do that without requiring it. Because the policy doesn't require that. The policy is only requiring it for third party. It's not requiring it for our own district staff.
That is, so under the PPRA indicates that for Department of Ed funded surveys, what was that?
Yeah, what is the PPRA? I'm sorry.
Val, PPRA means what?
The Protection of People Rights Act.
Thank you.
So and this is the act that guides this policy. Under the act, when a survey is submitted to a student, and that's any time that a student is presented with questioning. So sometimes we might refer to it as something other than a survey, like a screener or a a test, something like that, anytime that a student is asked to submit to a survey covering one of the 8 sensitive topics, if it were funded by the Department of Ed, there must be active consent by a parent. And if it is not funded by the Department of Ed, we are required to do, and that would be in the case of, for us, like a internal survey, we are required to provide direct notification to parents, and that direct notification must describe what the survey is, the sensitive topics that it might cover, when it's going to be given, and inform the parents that they have the right to review that survey and the right to opt out of this survey. And we've also included in this that we require informed consent as well for any third-party surveys as well that are not, funded by the Department of Ed. So we are the only time that the ability to not do an active consent would be in internal surveys that are not funded by the Department of Ed. And then we would do direct notification, and the parental right to opt out or review would be in place.
But for clarification, this policy doesn't require notification or informed consent for our own surveys. You're saying that there is going to be in the procedures, and that's the process in the PPRA.
No,
That there would be, because that was what we would do, but this policy doesn't clarify that we also do require notification.
it actually does. When we look below the 8 areas of sensitive areas, it says in cases of district-led collection of student data that may concern the above 8 categories, but is not funded by the U.S. Department of Education, the district shall notify parent guardians and adult or more emancipated minor students of their rights for refusal and their rights for their child's participation and their child's participation in the data collection activity.
So there it is. So it does clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
So for clarity, third-party research requires informed consent. When it's our own, we will be notifying them, and that's a shall, not a may. So we are required to notify parents and that they can opt out if they want to.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Director Burke.
I want to close the loop on this conversation because I think it's a really good one, and I appreciate you bringing that up. If you scroll down a little bit more in the packet, the language that we were originally looking at for this policy, which I think came through WASDA, was around applying these guidelines to federally funded surveys. And I'm looking to staff to correct me if I overstep here, but when we were talking with staff about, well, why just federally funded? And the feedback was, well, we have those practices for all of our surveys, but the policy language came with federally funded. We're like, well, let's change the policy language to all. And I think that became all third party, but then this paragraph down below indicates that it would include internal as well. So my understanding is that we have a standard policy for that this is codifying around opt-in, opt-out. And if that is true, please confirm. Or
It is true.
okay, so that was what changed the language in here from federally funded to including all outside sources.
And I really, really do appreciate that clarification and getting all the way down to the bottom of the page and reading that part, because the first thing that you read is third party only, and that gave me pause and concern. So I would just ask, I know you're working on the procedures, I would ask to the best of your ability and the procedures to be very clear about the district's responsibilities and how they are responding, particularly to this notification and opt-out and all of that. I'm sure you're already handling that in it, but it's so important to have that really clear for us knowing our processes as well as family and students to know what their rights are. Thank you.
Director Pinkham.
I almost got a concern that this may be a little bit too broad because that paragraph on that second page, because we collect data. We're always doing data, and that says that this almost to me sounds like we can even have people opt out of, hey, I don't want to be counted in the data. Versus surveys. I want to that paragraph to me in cases of district-led collection of student data. It doesn't say collection of surveys from or something like this. So that concerns me that someone may say, hey, sorry, you can't count my Native American child because I don't want that child to be counted in any data collected. Can I get that? Does it? I don't.
Mr. Boy.
I would just say that because of the fact that we are really focused on the questioning of the 8 sensitive topic areas, which precedes that language, and in that sentence prior, it talks about the data collection and then by the district for research, evaluation, or analysis. I think that we've narrowed it down appropriately with the focus towards that questioning of the sensitive areas, and then it then continues on talk about district data collection with the same context that concern the above 8 categories, and I think that that we're strong there as far as your concern.
Director Burke. Director Pinkham, does that address your concerns?
Again, just that one paragraph where it just talks about district-led collection of student data. That may concern the above 8 categories. That isn't collected anywhere in our system, like when we do student demographics and when people register their children for the school. None of this kind of data is collected of those 8 categories. So that's just what I was kind of concerned about, that, gee, if there was something that we did collect and then we want to do an analysis of that data, is this policy now saying we must get a permission from someone that may have identified as one of those in our system?
Has your concern been met and or explained, or are we at an impasse here?
Looking at, again, the 8 items, as long as I know that this data isn't collected as a process of us getting students enrolled, I'm good.
Okay, so we've got that. Director Burke, did you wish to speak further on this? I do. I appreciate that this is a long time coming. I appreciate that this took a great deal of work from legal, from board staff, from CNI, from the chair of CNI and the CNI committee, from research and evaluation, from comms. This hit a lot of different departments and streams of work. A whole lot of really fascinating arguments were had, and I don't think conflict's a bad thing as long as we learn to listen to each other and we come out with good work product like this. So, on that note, roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director Mack, Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you so much. C, action item number 2, approval of the extension of contract with Durham School Services for supplemental bus transportation services. This came before exec August 21st for consideration. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute a contract amendment extending contract SS 11822 through the 2019-20 school year for school bus transportation services with Durham School Services Incorporated in the form of the amendment attached to the board action report with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract amendment. Immediate action is in the best interests of the district.
I second the motion.
Take it away, Chief Podesta, please.
Fred Podesta, Chief Operations Officer. The board will recall that in the fall of 2018, the district was having trouble with transportation, that our main yellow bus home-to-school transportation provider for a student was struggling with fully staffing its driver ranks and was missing roughly 40 routes a day due to lack of drivers. So the district reacted as quickly as we could, and in late fall entered into a supplemental contract to get additional bus service from Durham, another provider, and was able over the next period of weeks to kind of stabilize services, add routes, and improve service markedly from the fall to the winter. And we think going into, while we've made other tactical changes and expect the driver picture to be better this fall than it was last fall, still think the prudent thing to do is to not be kind of over a barrel with one vendor, and to be able to draw from a broader pool of buses and drivers, and amend this contract to extend it another year.
Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues? Triple dog dare you. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Action item number 3, approval of bread bid RFT 02965. This came before Ops August 15th, 4. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the Friends Family Bakeries covering the period from September 1, 2019 to August 31, 2020 at a cost of up to $253,288.42 for bread products, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract. Approval of this motion would authorize a 1-year contract with annual renewal option for 2 additional years at a similar price. Immediate action is in the best interest of the district.
I second the motion.
Chief Podesta, take it away.
This is the third basic food contract that we're bringing to the board this year, the first being for fruits and vegetables and dairy products. This provides the bread products that we use for breakfast and lunch service. A request for proposal process was conducted in the spring. We had 2 vendors. This contract is a few $1,000s more on an annual basis projected, but the spectrum of products that they offer and the service in terms of delivery seems much better, and so the evaluation panel chose this provider, Fran's Bakery, also a local provider that many of us are familiar with. One question came at the operations committee about do we have any information about how the bakeries handle nut products and nut allergies? The facilities that will be serving us are all nut-free, so that will be one less thing to worry about. We would like.
Chief Podesta, could you also address the concern, or have your colleague address the concern regarding preservatives that came up at public testimony?
We do, not all these products are custom made for us, so people have different shelf needs, and we have an enormous warehouse and kitchens. So while it is true that we get products delivered to us relatively quickly, we do have storage issues and are working hard, which is why, and I appreciate you highlighting our nutrition services director's media attention, but we're trying hard to get fresher food in front of students, but we will store these products, and so having stabilizing elements I think is still important to us. I don't know, Aaron, if Aaron has anything he'd like to add, but I think we're still in that market where there will be some preservatives in our bread products.
And can we do away with them in 10 years and make scratch bread? It's good to have an aspirational goal. Yeah. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Director Burke.
I want to also echo an enthusiasm for baked products, but the love for scratch baking or having that equipment. and capability at our schools. I think back to my high school days where the rolls were 15 cents and the milk was 20. And I made it through my entire lunch on these $1 lunches that were 4 rolls and 2 milks. And it got me here today, made me who I am. So 4 rolls and 2 milks, that's the secret recipe.
I got to think that students smelling bread baking would only improve educational outcomes.
I know it's not nutritionally correct, but I just wanted to share that.
Director Pinkham, and then Director.
Yeah, I was just kind of caught, I guess, on the motion itself when it said similar price. Well, what's the definition of similar price?
I believe at a roughly $250,000 projected cost, this price was about $4,000 more than the other competitor.
It says, contracted, 1-year contract with annual renewal for option of 2 additional years at a similar price. So, similar price, I guess, is that, within that $250,000 range, is that similar?
That's relatively comparable to what we spent last year. We spent about 231. And this is an estimate. The actual cost will depend on what we order, the mix of bread products versus other carbohydrates that end up in our menu. So but
I don't know
we
that
wouldn't
he's
expect
talking about that as much as he's talking about the looseness of the word
similar price.
Similar price, that it's not tacked down. And that, if I'm reading you correctly, that gives you pause.
Right. It's an option. I don't know, Aaron, if you do want to chime in, if there's an inflator built into the contract that limits, and again, it's an option that we don't necessarily have to take. We can go to other providers. We'd expect it to be, again, in the market and roughly the rate of inflation. But are there any other
So is it coming
escalators
back
you
to
wanna put
us
in?
then for renegotiation in a year?
The option
What does
would,
the RFP say?
the option would come back to you if we expect similar expenses, because it would be over the $250,000 price.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Director Burke, you're good? Director Mack.
I just appreciate all the good work that's going on in nutrition services on all different fronts, including, and thank you for finding out about the nut-free aspect. That's safety of our students in our schools is important, and I know we also talked about the work that's going on to get more clarity around the allergens that are in our school lunches, so that it's easier for folks to figure out whether or not that's going to be a safe meal. Allergies are complicated, and I know that lots of folks out there have to go through the process of doing 504 plans and having all the accommodations. So I just really appreciate your attention to the safety of our students and finding that out.
Roll call, please.
Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Okay, action item number 4, and after this item, we're going to take a 10-minute break. School name change. Van Asselt at the African American Academy came before OPS August 15th for approval. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the change of Van Asselt at African American Academy to Rising Star at African American Academy. The change would commence in September 2019, but allow 1 full year for changes to be made to district systems. Immediate action is in the best interest of the district.
I second the motion.
Who's presenting this one? You, Chief Podesta?
I think I'll tee up a couple process points and then ask Principal Lamb to join me to talk about the outreach part.
Thank you.
So this, as the bar states, the school started considering this really based on practical issues, that having Van Asselt at African American Academy and having old Van Asselt and original Van Asselt has created myriad logistical problems for the school. But I think once staff and the school community got into it, this became more about building a new identity and about self-determination. So the principal and her team formed a naming committee that did exhaustive input from school stakeholders to think about a process and think about what it would mean to the school community. I also really want to applaud that this isn't a building name change. So the group voluntarily met the spirit of the board procedure about building name changes because it's transparent and calls for a lot of outreach and engagement. But a school name change is different and can be done differently, but I think they've used a very open process, and that's why we're here today. And just want to make sure that the board understands that this is being done in the spirit of a building name change, but the building name will not change. It's just that process is a good vehicle for getting input and getting engagement, and so the team followed it. Is there a question, Director Mack?
Yes, Director Harris. Director Harris. Hello. Director Mack. Note to self.
Okay, so just because I'm really looking forward to hearing from the principal and get some history as well, and I think the community is as well. But I really want to get clarification on what we're doing here so the public fully understands. So there are 2 buildings called Van Asselt.
Yes.
Aha. And those buildings,
There's
how many buildings are actually called Van Asselt?
there is original Van Asselt and old Van Asselt. I think the bullet.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's original Van Asselt, old Van Asselt, and Van Asselt.
Van Asselt is not a building name, it's a school name. The building name is
Okay.
African American Academy.
Okay, so we have 2 buildings that are called either original Van Asselt or old Van Asselt, but their name is technically Van Asselt. Okay. And then when the school itself moved to the African American Academy building, the building's name is African American Academy.
And will remain
That
so.
name of the building came with it. But we are not changing the actual building names of the 2 buildings that still exist, called Old Van Asselt and Original Van Asselt. Those are still Van Asselt as building names.
Right.
We are only changing the name of the school community in the African American Academy building.
And that building name will remain.
And the policy is around building names,
It is.
and it's very specifically around the importance of that and the process around that. So we're not doing that. We're not changing a building name.
But it's a significant change to the community. So I think that was why this process was followed, to give the board input and to follow a good process that encourages engagement. So I will turn it over to Principal.
And can our guests as well specifically address former PTSA President Sabrina Burr's comments and concerns?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Huyen Lam, principal at Van Asselt Elementary School. First, I'm really sorry for the way I dressed. I am dressed for packing and moving with my staff today, and so my mind has not been in looking good at all, and I apologize. I forgot the clothes. I didn't have to borrow her sweatshirt. So I do apologize, first of all. So as a new principal coming into community, I kind of grew up here pretty much, started my career at Van Asselt as an IA. Coming back to it, the first thing I look at the building, because oftentimes to me, being an immigrant, a refugee myself, name is really important. Name and identity is something really you need to have pride, to really know where you're coming from, to really think about the future, right? So I came into this building where you can't even find the identity, like Van Asselt. Like I came even as a leader, I didn't know where to sit because there's old Van Asselt everywhere. So I was standing looking for who I am. And I went to the building. There's this old hanging sign, that's hanging on the window, and you couldn't see Van Asselt. And I looked around the building. I'm like, who are we? Where are we? And so that was something I looked into, and I asked Jen, who's been here and who's been the heart and soul for 7 years at Van Asselt, why is that the case? And nobody wanted, and she shared all the confusions, all the fire department and all our budgets. And I looked at it. We were even like paying for somebody that's at Old Van Asselt when I went to our budget arena. So there's a lot of confusion. And I go, and this is a battle that not everyone wants to take on because it's very political as I went through the process. But I know it needs to be done because it's important to our community and our students. that there has to be a name that we can identify, be proud of, and we can then really start rising together and create a new future for our students, right? This aspiration. So Jen worked really hard. So I want her to share kind of the history that we did, because we understand it's important to bring our community in to really acknowledge and honor all the past that has been going on, how we got to this future, because to me that's really important when you really know your name and your identity, right? And so Jen will share and really share what Sabrina was concerned about, and we understand that. And so we were really careful in the way how we include and engage our community members.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Kovach, the assistant principal. And I love doing research, so that's why I've been more in the role of the historian. But I also need reading glasses, so here we go. So we actually started because we did meet with Sherry Cox and the superintendent, and it was recommended that we do research. So with the African American community, African American Academy community, we reached out to many people who were instrumental in the founding of the academy. So I want to say that going back to the early 1990s, we have connected with Ricky Malone, who was one of the original founders. We also were told that Michael Preston and Tony Orange were involved, but we were not able to contact them. We did work with Dr. Wanda Hackett, who was part of the Links, which supported the Academy, and Gail Johnson, whose mother was quite instrumental here in Seattle in getting many things going. And they have come to some of our meetings. With the Black Child Development Institute, which was also instrumental in supporting the Academy, Kimberly Early came and worked with us. No one from the Tabor 100 company responded, but we reached out to them. Colin Williams' family was contacted and declined to participate, but appreciated being contacted. Mel Streeter, the architect's sons, were contacted, but they did not. They decided not to participate as well. We contacted staff who had taught at the academy: Bill Butler, Mary Vester, George Freeland, and Dazan Davis. Were aware of the process, came to some of the meetings. Bill Butler especially. Mary Vester came to one of the meetings. George Breland was just communicating with us via email. And then Liz Reynolds Thomas came and participated in many of the meetings, and she was one of the big supporters with the Links as well. And then Valerie Fisher was a community member who came and also gave some input. So these are people who were instrumental back when the Academy was getting founded and was active in the building for the 10 years that it existed approximately in the African American Academy at 8311 Beacon Avenue South. To address Ms. Burr's comments about contemporary engagement with the Black community, which I think she was specifically addressing, although we were told many times that it wasn't just a school for Black students and that many students from many different ethnicities attended the school. We feel our community engagement with the present was very much with our families, and by reaching out to all of the people that I mentioned to you, we know that they were also reaching out to their sort of constituents and so forth. And what we learned from this process, loud and clear, is that African American Academy is a name that we want to carry very proudly as a building name, and that we, through this process, are going to, I think, be able to reaffirm all of the ideals and the work and the love and the care that went into that. So I feel like we are open to continuing to engage and will continue to engage with anyone who cares about African American Academy's history and present and future. To address Mr. Jaskin's comment, okay, sorry. When the Sharpless research was done, Ancestry.com probably did not exist. And so we luckily now have technology which allowed us to create a pretty complete family history tree of the Van Asselt family. And Van Asselt had 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son. One of the daughters, she married somebody named Benedum. Her name was Harriet Jane, and that family stayed in this area. So the other 3 siblings moved to California and moved to Michigan, and really sort of lost interest in their family. But Harriet Jane, great-granddaughter, who would have been Henry and Catherine Jane Maple, that was Henry Van Asselt's wife. Their great-great-great-granddaughter, Marlis, I will not share her last name just for confidentiality. She lives in the area, an island a little ways away from here, and she is a passionate historian of her family. She donated all of the letters to Mohai, and in addition, some furniture is there, which we can go and see, and you can go and see. And she said that she would talk to her brother Mark. So I also am active with Ancestry. So we communicated first over Ancestry, then we talked over the phone. And there actually are some of their children who are educators right now. One is a speech language pathologist over in Bellevue, and the other one is teaching again up in the islands. So she reached out to everybody in the family, including her brother Mark, the most closest descendants, and they are very happy to clear up the confusion. She really understood the confusion. She said, as long as there's at least one building named Van Asselt, we are happy. Well, there are actually still 4 buildings, at least that bear or 3 buildings that name the Van Asselt. There's the 1909 building, there's the 1950 building, and the 1909 building became a landmark in May, so that will stay that name, I imagine, for quite some time. I've recommended that those 2 buildings together become the Van Asselt Educational Complex to kind of clear up the confusion about the 2 buildings piece of it. And then the Van Asselt Community Center is right across the street, also having the name Van Asselt. Van Asselt became the name of an entire neighborhood because Henry Van Asselt had 320 acres, which sort of became a whole neighborhood. And it became annexed to Seattle in 1907. So there's more like the Van Asselts that sort of spread all over that area.
I'm going to ask you to twirl it up, but may I just say something here for the record? How cool is it that we have staff that is so passionate and so freaking talented? Thank you so much. Director Mack.
I really appreciate the thoroughness of the research and the reaching out and the. So I do have a question though for Mr. Podesta for future bars, because it does sound like the 2 buildings that are next to each other, but they're basically one school, that does need a renaming clarification. We are doing the ribbon cutting on Queen Anne, which has 2 buildings, but it's all Queen Anne. So I'm wondering if we can
And there's a landmark
facilitate getting
component
that
to
cleared.
that as well.
Can you schedule that for an ops meeting, please?
Yes, I just like to put that on the agenda.
For the chair of ops, Mr. Ops.
We'd be happy.
Roll call, please. Excuse me, the blind eye. Director Pinkham.
And just reading through this bar and stuff, for me, and I think maybe for some of the public, there's a lot of confusion. It seems like this Van Ness, or again, whatever at African American is referred to as a building. It's referred to as a school. It's referred to as a program. Which one is it? I think we need to make that a little bit clear in this. Is it a school or is it a program? Because
It's a school.
in some of the notes, they talk about, the renaming a program. And then another part of the notes, it talks about renaming the school. So for me, that just confuses a lot of stuff for me, as this what can then future happen. Oh yeah, they renamed a school through this process, and someone else, hey, we can rename a school just through the same process. I hope that this doesn't, make things muddy going down as schools want to change their name or programs change their name. Is this, again, it's a change of a school, if that's what it is, name. I want that to be clarified.
This microphone is hot. I think my understanding seemed to me that the bar was clear. Perhaps some of the background notes use the term program, but just to clarify, this is a school name. And really we have schools and buildings. Building name change is a much bigger deal. It involves OSPI and others. And a program, a school change is clearly what's going on here.
But looking at the notes, seems like they're following the procedure for program name changes, not for school name changes. So that's where the confusion.
The procedure they followed is for building name changes. That's the board procedure, is about building name changes.
In the notes that are included
Right.
with this,
Sure, I
page
understand.
6, it says, Gretchen DeBacher shares how program name changes are proposed. versus it seems like this should have been changing how school name changes should be chose. If that was, you know, again, maybe just a Scribner or something, still, again, for me, that just needs to be clarified that they followed the school name change procedure, not the name, program name.
I believe there are only board policies for building name changes. And so, which is the highest bar in terms of visibility and letting the board weigh in. So this team chose to use the highest possible bar. But
Director
what
Burke?
is being changed is a school name.
I want to commend your team on the outreach. I was reading through the level of detail that went into this. You know, we talk about our bar in terms of board action report, but this is a bar that has raised the bar. And I guess I think I can tell from the content, but I'd like it to be part of the record, why this is for intro action.
I meant a lot to the identity of the school and the school community to start school this year with the new name.
Madam Superintendent, please.
Yeah, I just want to commend Principal Lamb and her staff and her team for all the work they did. I mean, from that very first meeting we had around a small table with the input that was given there to what it's grown to become and all the deep engagement that happened and the work that was happening and all of the stakeholders that you had to engage. So I just want to thank you for diving into that, for really bringing people together and to come, you know, it's very significant to actually move from Van Asselt to Rising Star and what that means to your community. And I think it is a change that will help you galvanize your community to really have an identity about who it is you are for your students, right? And what that means to your staff and families. So just thank you, Principal Lamb, for your leadership in that and for the team members that you were able to bring together on that.
Roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Aye, shine bright.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
A 15-minute break, 7:05 back here. Thank you. One 180-16-220. This came before CNI August 20th for approval. Approval of this item would approve each school within the district as having a school improvement plan that is data-driven, promotes a positive impact on school learning, and includes a continuous improvement process pursuant to WAC 180-16-220. Chief Jesse.
Good evening, Wyatt Jesse, Chief of Schools and Continuous Improvement. Yes, I'm here for our annual request to approve our continuous improvement plans for our upcoming 104 schools. So this process really does follow tightly to the state WAC, as you're stating, Director Harris, and we've reviewed the list. We've got all the addresses correct. They all have been posted as of July 1. They've been reviewed multiple times. And so it's not only, this process started actually all the way back in February, where schools are working with their staff, their BLT, moving through the process of really taking it seriously about where we're at, especially under our new strategic plan. And so we've really honed in this spring about making sure that the schools were nesting their goals and their work underneath the strategic plan. And for example, elementary schools with their grade English language arts.
Director Mack.
As we just had a robust conversation around the difference between a school and a building, and last year the request was made by me, and I'm really grateful that it's included now that the addresses are in here, because we move schools so many times and it gets confusing, and having that clarification is really helpful. I was looking through the list though and noticed that 2120 Van Asselt Elementary, given our just recent board approval of the name change, that would be appropriate to change it to Rising Star at African American Academy, right?
So that would take fold, and then we also have to do that work with OSPI because that has its own process of the recognition of the name. And so there's some technical things that we would go over with OSPI to recognize the change in how it's listed with OSPI.
So can you help clarify for me then, because that's the name of the school now as we just board approved it, but OSPI has a number and a name, and Magnolia and Lincoln don't have their numbers yet. So
That's right.
Where are we at in terms of making those schools OSPI official?
I can give you an update for sure. It's OSPI, so I think sometimes things take a little bit of time in the form package that we present to them. Sometimes there's questions coming back on those form packages, and then they give us, then there's some clarity about what exactly it is, and then they get back to us and then assign a number. As you are very well educated, Dr. Mack, around what it is specifically for the school and it's identified as. So I can get back and I'll put that in a Friday memo.
Will it be updated by the time we actually approve these schools, or not? Will it be in this list appropriately? Because what we're approving technically when we approve this board action is the list of schools and their continuous, that they have in continuous improvement. They have CSIPs. But if the name, will there be a number attached to those two schools, and will Rising Star at African American Academy be corrected on this list?
I can correct the name on the list. How OSPI moves, I'll have to get back to you. Sometimes they don't move so, I'm just being really frank with you, like OSPI just does not move always really quickly on assigning numbers. So I'm just trying to make sure that we do list them. We will present them. That's one of the big requirements by the state, that we recognize those.
I would appreciate for it to be in the bar language, specifically clarifying why they don't have numbers and
Sure.
what's going on with that and the expectation for when they will have their number, and if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Footnotes. Director Burke.
I just want to share for my colleagues, as always, the continuous school improvement plans create great venue for conversation for directors and staff alike. One of the topics that came up during CNI was the question about, we recognize that there are changes in leadership that happen. And when there's a change in leadership at a school, is the intent that the new leader would develop a new CSIP, or that the new leader would follow the existing one, or somewhere in between, and kind of what should be our expectation from a governance point of view? And first, there's an understanding that the CSIP is an iterative and kind of living document, but that it also represents the roadmap for the school that was determined by the staff and the BLT and approved. And so an incoming leader has that as a roadmap. And so the expectation that was telegraphed to us was that, explicitly stated to us, was that new leaders would be working within the CSIP that had been developed by the previous staff, and then as they developed their own understanding of the school and other areas for gaps or closure that needed to happen in future versions or future editions, there could be changes. But I think it's just an important thing to have out in the public dialogue.
Director Mack.
I appreciate you bringing that point up, Director Burke, because in the policy, I think there's a specific language around, like, if they're not meeting the goals of the CSIP and it's not being met, then there are certain corrective actions, including replacement of principals and so forth. So can you explain what the process is for checking in on whether or not the CSIPs are being followed as they've been written, and at what point is the leadership of the school, the principal, assistant principal, held accountable in some way for those things? What is our process to intersect?
So the process to intersect, if you even look at the WAC, it does draw out that it's a there's nothing prohibiting schools to use a multi-year process. Just because you nest under and do a certain strategy, are at schools, as Director Burke is kind of leading ourselves down the road of, all right, somebody comes in, new principal or established principal even, the work that has been drawn out there should tie again to the strategic plan. It should have been a good assessment. We now have such a robust involvement of a BLT and their staff that it's not just principal dependent. And then further, our ability, we are now, and I know I've explained some of this with some of the board directors, is that's why we are structuring ourselves to center the work of central office to support the CSIP. So it's not just waiting for the school to have their own ability to work in a kind of annualized process and be a compliance, but is actually now something, I think one of you mentioned, ongoing process for continuous improvement. How am I doing? What's going on with students? We now have those assessments, we now have data reporting on it. So schools are actually right in the middle of adjusting. I go out in schools in this process, Director Mack, and we engage in conversations. Diane does, Cashel does. I mean, other leaders in central office are out in the schools as well as the directors of schools to coach in with principals and their leadership teams to make adjustments to just those strategies or those systems that they have to correct and to better serve our students, especially our students of color furthest from educational justice. Ultimately, when there are not a lot of progress, that intensifies the support actually of central office in working with those particular schools.
Director Pinkham, did you have comment, question, concern, sir?
No, nothing. I'm just glad Director Burke brought up the conversation that we had at the CNI meeting, and just always just getting the schools and programs and just making sure we clarify that what's what, because again, as you look at your list that you have, there's no header to the list, so you just start out with the name. I'm just taking the first line. There's 2462 Loy Heights Elementary School. Elementary gives the address, city, state. And then in some of those columns for the elementary, high school, you do put programs. But then Cascade Parent Partnership Program is listed as K through 8. Should be, getting confusion. Is that a program or is that a school?
Those are identified. I just want to jump in there. Those are identified as programs, those specific things, because they're not, and that's actually following our own way that we do our quarterly reporting through CNI on programs that provide unique services.
So I just wondered about that third column. Should that column indicate if it's a school or program? Is that what this is intended to do?
Yes. And the state, even though we made arguments before that we just want to do the schools, the state, as I was trying to allude to earlier, they can get very stubborn. We don't have seniors. I mean, some of those students at Bridges, those are all students from 18 to 21 years old. It's a different program for special ed services.
Okay, I'm going to go there. 10 years ago, we had board directors on the dais saying, well, it's okay. It doesn't have to be correct. We just have to vote on it. We've made a lot of progress, and for that I am extraordinarily thankful. We did, however, this last year hear a great many testimonies from that very podium about CSIPs not being followed from school communities, and being most upset about same, and there seemed to be a disconnect with respect to accountability and transparency. And the CSIPs are one of the few places where the board actually has a touch point on some of these issues because we have 2 employees. And I don't know what the answer is, and I appreciate that you're in a new position and that we've reorged and restructured and that we're taking a look at how we address supervision and accountability and transparency. But I'm extraordinarily distressed that we heard so much testimony this last year about Washington Middle School and the CSIP plan not being followed. And if this means anything, then there has to be another layer of something. I don't know what that is. I certainly will defer to the professionals in the room about how that works. But if we lose trust with folks, it takes us 10 times longer to earn it back. And that's really disturbing. So all that said, I'm still looking through them, and you can count on hearing comments, questions, and concerns before this goes for action. It's become a hobby for me. Director Burke.
Just to briefly touch on that concern and what Director Mack brought up, I want to remind all of us, but especially those of you that are going to be going on for longer, the work that has started around policy A02, performance management, because that is the place where policy governance intersects with the CSIP, intersects with accountability, intersects with district scorecard. It is the nut that we started working on across exec and CNI, spanning 2 committees, and was sort of put on hiatus while the strategic plan built a little bit stronger legs and wings. And so I guess I'm just going to encourage committee chairs to look at putting that work back on the work plan and elevating it and keeping that focus.
Director Mack?
I appreciate that ping because I think I appreciate Mr. Desi your response, but it wasn't. I still don't understand what the actual process is. I don't understand what the timeline would be, or if there's like after 6 months we do a check-in. There's no. In my mind, there is an internal process that happens, but there's no formalized process that I can point to and say, this is when there should be evaluation, this is how it's done, that thing. So that's what I'm kind of looking for, would be interested in seeing more of.
So you know to expect that question at action, and hopefully we can brief on that issue. Number 2, approval of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funding for the Seattle Intervention Tracking and Community Partner Access Grant. This came before ANF August 19th for consideration. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to accept grant funds totaling $698,406 over 2 years from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the development of a community partner and school intervention tracking system. Take it away, Chief Berge.
Jolynn Berge, Chief Financial Officer. This grant proposal outlines funding for an intervention tracking and community partners access grant. This funding will aid in the development of a community partner and school tracking system to improve our ability to track interventions offered by community-based organizations and identify gaps in services. Currently, schools are building their own one-off spreadsheets, and this would give us a central repository, which we can put in the interventions and have a way to measure that. So it will create a system for a flow of information with a central managed system, and it will enable our partners, school staff, and central office staff to input, track, and monitor interventions provided to each individual student in compliance with our student record policy, and it does not grant any additional access to any student data other than what the CBOs, community-based organizations, already have. There were 3 comments at Audit and Finance. We have amended the bar addressing those comments. Number one, we corrected a number to reconcile the amount of the grant and the bar to the grant award. Number two, we added in the policy implication part of the bar, we referred to the student records policy, policy 4231. And third, we were requested in the grant itself to add stronger language about following student privacy rights and access of that personal information, and that has been done on page 5 of the grant application. That concludes my remarks.
Comments, questions, concerns from my colleague? Director Mack.
I really appreciate that those additional things came in after committee and the conversation that we had. My question or just clarification for transparency on this is, from my understanding, this money is for 2 years of work to put a system together, but it may not and does not include the cost of the system. So it is the researching of what exactly should this look like, but not necessarily this money is not going to pay for the actual system that will eventually be needed.
The grant, as I understand it, will pay for 2 positions. We will do requirements gathering with the schools and the community-based organizations to figure out what data and what the system needs to look like. The grant will also fund the development of the system. I believe you're talking about the ongoing maintenance costs, which we believe those to be very small in the out years. Not yet defined, but not so large that we have concerns.
Director Mack.
Okay, so just for clarification, because I had a different understanding from the committee meeting, this is actually the development of some database system. They're going to be building it, but so it's not an off-the-shelf thing. It's going to be utilizing some existing software, Excel, Access, one of those database systems, and it's going to tie into our existing systems, and they're going to bring it all together, and it's not going to be an additional cost, just the maintenance in the future.
Correct. We don't know yet what the system might be. That's not predetermined. That's part of what we'll go through in the discovery process. Whether or not it's something that we currently have that we amend, it's some off the, customizing off the shelf software or something different.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Director Burke.
So what I think I heard, and I'm trying to read here, 2 FTE, 3 years?
2 FTE, 2 years.
2 years. Okay, there's a 3-year time frame or 3-year kind of milestone. Is that?
What page are you referring?
I'm looking on essentially page of the grant document. This is the one that's got page 3 at the bottom. And this is the topmost box. It's basically page 7 of the bar. Talks about a 3-year, year 1, year 2, year 3. So does this investment just cover year 1 and year 2, and year 3 is fully?
I think what you're seeing is a difference between their calendar years and our school years. So this is running for us through 1920 and 2021. So I imagine for the Gates Foundation, it's 1920 and 21.
Yeah, it talks about year 3, 2021 to 2022, full systems implementation, managed and professional development brought in-house by the district.
Yep,
that implies that that's a no
us.
cost.
Yep, that's us standing it up and having it operational. So
2 FTE, 2 years. And would those be new staff or funding existing staff?
no, at this point, we believe there would be new staff.
Okay, thank you.
Director Pinkham.
I'm actually kind of flashing back to the other bar that we just approved about surveys and stuff. And what if our CBOs are politically affiliated, and then how that can possibly tie into our data? Now, do we risk having actually information here that identifies students based upon possibly these things if we connect it to our data?
I'm not sure. I feel like that may be outside the scope of this grant. That may be a different question.
Would that be a question for our legal counsel then, or? Because if we're trying to, again, we're tracking data. So let's say there's religious CBO that's providing services, and
This is
could
about,
that possibly share some information about a student if we tie it to our data?
so they follow our current data share policies, and they're offering interventions. So we're tracking student interventions, what's being provided to the student, and those outcomes. That's it, within the current structure of the policy. That's all I can say, is that we are careful when we are signing MOUs with every community-based organization. Both Ronald and I both review those to make sure that it is following that document and that policy. There are general terms and conditions in those MOUs that talk about non-allowed purposes of the data.
Could you clarify interventions, please, and give some examples of that to put this conversation in context, please?
Sure. So maybe someone is providing, let's say, tutoring. That's a pretty common example. So they've decided that they have a method. They're coming in and they're tutoring a child in reading for 30 minutes every day, or maybe they're talking about math, or maybe they have another program that talks about maybe how to build a child's self-esteem. So how that intervention looks in that program, what it is, and then whether or not they can measure outcomes in their system as well as for us.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on. Number 3, approval of grant from Amazon Future Engineer to support science, technology, engineering, and math STEM education activities. This came before A&F August 19th for approval. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to accept the grant from the Amazon Future Engineer in the amount not to exceed $300,000. Amazon is supporting up to 30 schools in the district to launch their Amazon Future Engineer program. First Washington Robotics, establishing and running a First Washington Robotics Club during the 2019-20 school year. And I want a shout out to our soup and our staff. When this first came in, so she went back and got more. The team went back and got more. And I believe that Director Burke will well remember at the Seafair Hydro races a year ago, when we were supposed to be making small talk and all that with the really big poobahs in the area, we ended up at the Washington First Robotics tent all day. And we convinced them to come show their program in real living color at SLI out at West Seattle High School in the lobby, because we couldn't get them on the program. It was already set. This is the kind of collaboration and leverage that we truly need, and given Amazon's reach, I hope we can exponentiate it in the future. The floor is yours, CAO DeBecker.
Thank you, President Harris. You have teed this up quite well. It is a result of a conversation that started earlier this spring with Amazon, where they wanted to bring the First Washington program into a few schools in Seattle. We actually declined their offer at that time. You, as a board, had just approved the strategic plan. We asked Amazon to please look at the strategic plan and see if they could expand it and tie it more to their program, to what we had in mind. And they came back to us with more schools. As you could see, there are up to 30 schools. We have 27 schools signed up so far to do this. We anticipate we'll get the other 3 very quickly after school starts. And then what this bar is for tonight is that there will be a $10,000 stipend or amount paid to each of those schools participating to do things beyond what's happening in the after-school programs, such as paying for entry fees if they go to competitions, paying for transportation. So the $10,000 per school will be decided on its use by the school, but it will also be coordinated through our Career and Tech Ed program, because we want that amount, that money, to go to enhancing the programs that will be there through the First Washington program.
Director Pinkham, comments, questions, concerns, sir?
Yeah, just looking through this, Did we ask to list those 3 additional schools or not in this? Because those 3 additional schools are known.
No, no. At this time, we know 27. There are 3 openings.
But I thought we knew which 3 schools were being.
There are 27 schools that we know right now. Amazon is funding up to 30. So we have 3 spots still available.
But I thought we discussed which those 3 schools were, correct? Am I?
No, not to my recollection.
Well, let me check my notes because I thought.
While you look at your notes, Director Mack.
I just also want to, if we could be really clear about what this specific grant is covering, and that there's a whole bunch of money that's going around the backside and not coming through our coffers that's funding this program, correct? So this $300,000 is specifically to support the students that access the program at those schools to have additional materials, however they need to spend it so that they can run the program. But the actual funding of the FIRST robotics after school program, the staff, etc., that's all covered and that doesn't come through Seattle Public Schools, and that's paid directly by FIRST Washington. I'm not sure if it's through grant. I don't remember what was stated, but just for clarification, this is just about the materials at these 30 schools.
Correct.
And additional funding, but that the program is actually potentially running at way more schools than that are being funded through parents at the school or other whatever.
No. The after-school robotics program is being sponsored via Amazon, via First Washington. So that the after-school program is coordinated in that manner. This $10,000 going to each of the participating schools is coming through us. They are connected though, and so they are connected.
Director Pinkham.
Okay, and the meeting that we had discussed this. It was shared with me that those 3 schools were Aki, Rainier and World Schools. So for you to say no, I got a concern here. What's the message?
I will double check on that. They are not listed in the bar. The 27 schools listed in the bar on pages 2 and 3. I was not aware that we had a commitment from those 3 schools at this time.
Yeah, I think that's what I was asking at the one meeting, and those were the 3 that were shared with me. And again, it was an open meeting, so I'm not violating anything here.
That's fine.
So I just want to see if that can get clarified.
We will have that clarified for you by the time this comes for action.
Director Mack.
I think I also remember requesting that it would be helpful to clarify how many students access these programs at each of the schools.
Yes, that is in the bar.
Okay, great, thank you.
It is outlined there as to how many how many students are depending on the grade level.
Okay, moving on. Number 4 on our list of 11 intro items, and our time check is 7:35? 7:41, excuse me. Okay, number 4, Discovery Research K-12, DRK-12, grant from the National Science Foundation. This came before ANF August 19th for approval. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to accept the Discovery Research K-12, DRK-12, in parens, grant from the National Science Foundation, which was awarded on July 1, 2019, in the amount of $500,000 per year for 3 years, for a total of $1.5 million for the 3-year grant period. Are you also presenting on that?
Yes, I am presenting on this.
Thank you. Take it away.
I'm very proud to announce that we, the Seattle Public Schools, recipient of a partnership grant with the University of Washington, a grant that is through the National Science Foundation. This is a grant that will help us in preparing our teachers, specifically our K through 5 teachers, on science and on pedagogy. and also having a partnership with the university in order to strengthen the use of the next generation science standards. This is a grant that has been sought after by the University of Washington for 4 years now. This is the third time that they've applied for it. They were finally successful in getting that, so it's a long time coming. You were first notified of the grant, I believe, in a Friday memo in July. And with us today, if you have questions specifically about the grant and what will happen with it, we have Dr. Jessica Thompson from the University of Washington. She has graciously attended in case you have questions specifically about what will be happening. But it's a perfect timing for us, as you know, with the science standards and the science curriculum being approved later or earlier this spring. This allows us to strengthen the PD that those K through 5 teachers will get.
Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues? Director Burke, then Director Mack.
I would like to learn a little bit about the activities around this grant and what we see as measures of efficacy from this work in past or related areas. I say that because, being candid, there's history around NSF funded programs that have potentially not improved student outcomes, and specifically the work around mathematics dismantled a lot of mathematics for a lot of students. And so I'm looking to see that this is something that that we're not buying onto the front side of a treadmill that's going to create disadvantages for our students when we're trying to improve their access to sophisticated science and math and technology.
With your permission, President Harris, Dr. Jessica Thompson from the University of Washington.
So addressing your question about what activities will be involved, these are primarily activities that support the teachers in professional learning. Our team has been studying teacher learning for several years, and we are looking, so we're supporting the professional development for the teachers. As you know, before we can really look at student outcomes, we also have to look at teacher outcomes. And that's one of the things actually that the grant will help us do, is understand the process measures. So not just the outcome, but the process measures along the way, so that we can understand how teachers are learning and answer those questions about under what conditions and for whom, how are the teachers learning. And we'll actually be doing some classroom observations and working with teachers to see how they're working on pedagogy in the classroom. And it'll actually give us a better lever so that we can actually understand any relationships to the student outcomes as well.
Also address his concerns about past National Science Foundation grants.
Yes, I don't know the mathematics NSF funded grants that you're referring to, but I think that what is important is to understand. I think these process measures are really important to understand, so that because we could just go ahead and do professional development and then hope for the best outcome. But if we can understand how teachers are learning along the way, then we can fine tune and improve the professional development so that we can get those better outcomes. So it really is, has the built-in, it actually is modeled off of the Carnegie Networked Improvement Communities, which looks at quick process measures, so we can do rapid cycles of looking at data and analyzing how teachers are learning, so we can respond very quickly to the improvements of the professional learning that we're providing.
Director Mack.
I had a question in committee, Ms. DeBacker, about when and where we were notified of this grant, that this had been applied for well over a year ago, and we went through the entire science adoption and all of that going on, and I did not remember hearing about this. And so I was wondering if that research had been done, had been identified where we were notified and when?
We, as far as our own science community here, from Mary Margaret and our science team, we are aware that the University of Washington has applied for this 2 other times, because when they write a partner into that grant, that partner has to sign off on it. So we were aware that the grant was in process. Your application was due last November, so
So the application was due last November, but the board wasn't notified that this grant was being applied for.
I cannot answer that since I was not here at
Because
that
because I
time.
asked the question during the committee, hoping that that it came out in a Friday memo, or it actually was stated in a meeting, and because I think I have recollection of asking specific questions around grants and not hearing about this.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we were not notified of this previously.
You were notified that the grant was received in early July. As whether or not you were notified back in November, I am not privy to that information.
Superintendent Juneau, and then Director Pinkham.
So, yeah, I think the process, like, there are applications for grants in process a lot. And so we don't receive several, and we don't bring grants we are applying for until we actually receive them to the board, or that we're part of or members of or signing
Okay.
on.
Director Pinkham, thank you. And Director Pinkham, then Director Burke.
Thank you for this. And I do see that there was a correction, but still, maybe with the professor from the University of Washington here, it used to say University of Washington Department of Education, but now we are saying University of Washington School of Education. I believe the correct name is College of Education. So we may, again, I know we corrected, at least got Department of Education changed, but now it says school. I ask that it say College of Education in the bar and the purpose. So if we can again make that change, College of Education. It's the School of Medicine. But this is the College of Education we're doing a grant with.
Director Burke.
I will look to Diane and your team around accountability measures. Just to restate, this board approved $5 million for professional development for a K-5 science adoption. This is an additional $1.5 million. There was some additional money in the middle school and the high school. This is the single largest investment by subject area that I have ever seen in the history of this district. I believe it's certainly larger than what the board has approved for our strategic goal of African American males reading by 3rd grade. So I just want to really put forth the gravity of this situation and the investment, and there needs to be incremental accountability.
And I'll follow that up and close the subject out. This board was buffeted for months on our new science curriculum. We passed it. That was then, this is now. But we did amend it from the dais that we would have a 4-year look at. And it would seem to me that that this PD, and paying off of Director Burke's point, $5 million. Does that mean that we can find other uses for the $5 million and have this grant supplant? I guess is one of my questions, if this money is newfound money, if you will. And I think the point that Director Mack was making, and I will elucidate that, for months, we were involved in quite controversial science adoption procedures, and it could not have been unknown that this grant was out there. And I, for one, as a board director, would have appreciated knowing about it. It's a question of trust and transparency. And I get that we apply for grants every week here, but that's a different case. The Amplify was quite controversial. Lots of information came to us, but the fact that this didn't is disturbing. Moving on. And thank you for coming, by the way. Much appreciate your help. And look forward to being asked really good, tough questions in the future. Number 5, Office of the Superintendent Public Instruction, OSPI, Beginning Educator Support Team, BEST. Grant approval came before ANF August 19th for approval. Approval of this item authorizes the superintendent to accept the 2019-20 BEST grant in the amount of $300,000 and to implement the provisions of said grant. Dr. Codd, Chief of Human Resources.
Thank you. Good evening. So the BEST grant is awarded by OSPI to all school districts. It is not competitive grant. It's actually based on the number of novice teachers that you have in your district. The BEST grant funding we have received every year for the past 5 years. It flows through legislative action and comes to the school districts, but it is above the $250,000 threshold, so we do need to bring it before you for approval. This grant supports our PAR program and allows us to hire additional consulting teachers, who you may know as STAR consulting teachers. Under our new PAR program, we not only support our first-year teachers, we also support our second and third-year teachers who have not yet met the performance standards. This grant allows us to hire 2 additional consulting teachers, which allows us to lower the caseload overall for all of the teachers. The funding also supports the implementation of our foundational coursework, which is the professional development series that first and second year teachers will receive to increase their instructional skills and their culturally responsive teaching practices. Our goal really through PAR and thanks to this grant that helps us is to make sure that all of our third year teachers moving into the continuing status or tenure, as some people call it, fully meet our performance expectations and have the tools necessary to meet the needs of our students. So I'll open it up with questions.
Thank you. Comments, questions, concerns? I have a question about STAR Mentor teachers. When they become STAR Mentor teachers, are they STAR Mentor teachers as long as they wish to be, or do we have a 5-year limit and then return them to the teaching force and bring up other folks? I'm trying to figure out what the pipeline looks like here.
Yeah, so we call them STAR Mentor Consulting Teachers now because we also have the Evaluation Support Consulting Teachers under one umbrella. And they are 5-year terms, and they have to commit to going back into the classroom. So there is a rotation, and we are trying to think about making sure people are coming from the classroom, close to the classroom, helping other classroom teachers improve their instructional skill, and then getting them back into the classroom.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Codd.
I also have the next item.
Well, then you're not dismissed. Number 6, approval of the draft project agreement, quote, teacher diversity contract, end quote, between the City of Seattle Department of Education Early Learning, DEEL, and the Seattle Public Schools to diversify the educator workforce. This came before ANF August 19th for approval. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to execute the draft teacher diversity contract with the Department of Education and Early Learning and accept the funds in the amount of $550,000 for the purposes of advancing diversity among the educator workforce. Take it away.
Sure. So as you are fully aware, our voters in the City of Seattle voted to approve the levy in November of 2018. And then on March 12th of 2019, the school board, you all approved the Families in Education Preschool and Promise Levy Partnership Agreement, the overall partnership agreement, accepting grant funds totaling $25,673,221. At the time of that, the City of Seattle Department of Education and Early Learning and our HR department, we were still discussing our overall approach and strategy to the teacher diversity portion of the Families in Ed levy. So it was not in what you originally approved on March 12th. I just want to make sure you understand. This grant is for $550,000.
This is in addition to the really big number
This
you
is-
read out.
This is
Okay.
in addition to the big number of 25 million something something. So this grant award is $550,000. It's for the 2019-20 school year. We are available to apply and engage in this partnership in future years, but this is just a one-year grant at this point in time with, of course, we need to meet deliverables so that we can renew, but it is anticipated that we will be able to renew for at least the next 5 years. So this grant directly supports our strategic plan goal to have a culturally responsive workforce. The work plan in that strategic plan and the work plan outlined in this draft project agreement are the same. The grant supports our efforts aimed at recruiting, supporting and mentoring, and removing barriers for educators of color so that they can become teachers in our system. There are essentially 4 programmatic strategies that are outlined in the attached project agreement or teacher diversity contract. Number 1, Academy for Rising Educators. You heard Superintendent Juneau talk about that program in her comments and show pictures of that first inaugural cohort. That is for graduating seniors or adult learners in our own paraprofessional ranks or even in the community who do not yet have an AA degree. So it's a pathway for those adult learners who think they might want to be on the pathway to teaching, but they have not completed a college degree yet. And so we have a new pathway for them. We have the Classified to Cert program, which this grant also supports. Those are our current classified employees here in Seattle Public Schools who already have AA degrees or perhaps a BA degree, and then we help them on a pathway so that they can get their, finish out their BA if they need to and get their teaching credential. This grant also supports Seattle Teacher Residency, which you are fully aware of that program, which I know you're all in support of. And that helps our adult learners who already have a BA degree earn a master's degree. And then a new pathway, My Brother's Teacher, which is in partnership with the University of Washington and Deal to encourage males of color to become teachers in the early learning spaces. We're focused on not just recruiting and enrolling our adult learners into these different pathways and programs, but we are interested in making sure that they persist, like our lights, keep going, that they complete all their programming, so there's a mentorship and advising aspect, and then eventually, yes, get them hired into Seattle Public Schools and keep them in Seattle Public Schools. So we've got about $140,000 dedicated to direct tuition support. We've got $110,000 dedicated to a program coordinator who will oversee this entire project and also helps us with our recruitment of educators of color in general. And then $150,000 to the Seattle Teacher Residency and $100,000 for My Brother's Teacher, which is a new pathway. And then, of course, we've got the indirect costs at the 9.8% indirect rate. So with that, I'll just open it up for questions.
So what's this, is this a new hire that you're talking about?
Yes, it has not. They have not been hired yet.
Okay. Sustainability concerns, obviously, and then is this the same 25% holdback from Deal that they do for Seattle Preschool Partnership?
There is no 25% holdback that we've been talking about in our discussions. So there's nothing in our, if you look in the attachment, there's nothing about a 25% holdback. I'm not actually aware of what the 25% holdback is because it's not in my area and I haven't been paying attention to
Well,
that.
they call it performance pay. We call it being their banker. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Director Pinkham.
Thank you for this, and also to the City of Seattle on providing this grant opportunity and contract for us. And I'd asked, like at the meeting, good to see that culturally responsive professional development preparation, and also the note of that Pathway 5 bilingual certification program. If maybe in the future, as we look at this, to also include some other diversity certifications or endorsements that schools may offer, if we can add that kind of support, if that can be possible, because as I noted, the University of Washington has a Native American kind of a tribal certification endorsement that is a summer program for students or teachers to go to, and I know it costs, and some people say, well, who's going to cover that cost? And if we can direct some funds there, that'd be fantastic.
Sure, and I think it's important for you all in the public to know that this strategy is iterative. We're constantly learning. We're engaging with our partners. They're giving us feedback. We have a new Office of African American Male Achievement. Keisha Scarlett is relatively new in her role, and so there's a lot of really good thinking that this opportunity, this grant, is really kind of bringing people together and helping us think about what the future of this could look like and how we could expand just in our strategies and our mentorship and our professional development. I'm really excited. There is an opportunity for this to be for the next 5 years. This just happens to be, you know, for 1 year, $550,000 for 1 year, but we fully anticipate that this is an ongoing grant to the Human Resources Department.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. 7, amendments to Superintendent Denise Juneau's employment agreement to address performance compensation amounts for 2019-20 and 2021 and base salary for 2019-20 to Exhibit A, performance evaluation compensation criteria, to the superintendent's employment agreement to change the bonus payment date from June 30th to September 30th and define previously undefined terms, and authorization for future salary discussions with the superintendent. This came before exec August 21st for approval. Approval of this item would increase the superintendent's base salary, set performance compensation amounts for the 2019-20 school year and the 2021 contract year. Approve an amended Exhibit A to the superintendent's employment agreement. Authorize the board president and board vice president to have salary discussions with the superintendent connected to her salary and bonus increases starting with the 2020-21 school year. And authorize the board president to execute Amendment 2 to the superintendent's employment agreement and to execute amended Exhibit A to the superintendent's employment agreement. Assistant Chief Counsel John Serqui, take it away.
Good evening, John Serqui, and I was asked by President Harris to assist in drafting of this bar involving the superintendent's compensation and items that are related to that. So the summary went through kind of the 4 items that this board action report proposes. One is to change the base salary. There is some discussion still. I wanted to put that on the record as to what other non-represented employees in the district will receive. The bar is written with an exact amount, but at action it could be changed to say I move that the board approve increase in the superintendent's base salary by the amount given to other non-represented management staff. So that's an option for you to consider between now and action. The other items to set the performance compensation, the bonus amount, it was listed in our original employment agreement at $15,000 per year. It was left open as to whether you wanted to change that amount. The executive committee has put forward $15,000 for the bonus amount, so that's going to set that in the contract for the next 2 years. Part of that discussion precipitated whether there should be ongoing salary discussions and retention discussions with the superintendent, which gets into the 4th prong about delegating salary discussions to the president and vice president, which this board authorizes those discussions to happen with those 3 individuals. Obviously, any final decision would come back to the board for action. And then it also amends Exhibit A. So Exhibit A was what we set staff and the board and the superintendent worked on the goals as to what would be the performance criterion for the next 2 years. And when this was approved by the board, we included percentages and percentage points inconsistently. So we are correcting that. It's 5 percentage points. So that is in the document. It's also moving the date as to when this bonus will be paid. We heard from Dr. Anderson that the vetted and valid data from
Dr. Anderson, who's the Director of Research and Evaluation, correct?
Thank you, yes.
You betcha.
That this data would be available and stronger data if it was what we had on September 1, so that now the bonus will be paid on September 30th if it is earned versus the June 30th date that was previously included. We just will not have good data to use by June 30th to determine whether the bonus has been earned. And then we wanted to define what students are furthest from educational justice. So there's a definition of that in the amended Exhibit A to include African, African American, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islander, and Southeast Asian students. And those are the 4 items that are contained in this bar, if I can answer any questions.
Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Cirque. Number 8, BEX 4, Resolution 2019-20-5, acceptance of the building commissioning report for the Loyal Heights Elementary School Modernization and Addition Project. This came before OPS August 15th for consideration. Approval of this item would adopt Resolution 2019-20-5, accepting the building commissioning report for the Loyal Heights Elementary School project. Chief Podesta, take it away.
It's our practice at the closing of capital projects to hire a commissioning agent who is a quality assurance expert who inspects and determines to our satisfaction the mechanical systems and building systems are working appropriately. In this case, for Loyal Heights, the commissioning agent tracked 171 issues relating to building systems, HVAC, mechanical, and plumbing, and has since signed off on every one of them. At committee, there was one that was unresolved related to a gas meter that has since been resolved. And this is part of closing out a project. It's part of our OSPI process and releasing retainage payments to the contractors. So this means the project is done and somebody else has certified it.
Completely then close it out? Done, and done?
Done for these elements. There may be other contractual pieces that I'm not aware of, but for this, it's close.
Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. You're staying there. 9, BEX 4, BTA 4, approval of construction change order number 20 for the Lincoln High School Modernization and Addition Project. This came before OPS August 15th for approval. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to execute the construction change order number 20 for the Lincoln High School Modernization and Addition Project in the amount of $798,542.22, plus Washington State sales tax with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent and to take action to implement the change order. Take it away, Chief Podesta, please.
This authorizes payment for roughly 120 work items, ranging from things from a few $100s to tens of thousands of dollars that come up along the way with a $93 million construction project.
In a historic building.
In a historic building, which those of you who've seen it is gorgeous. And I invite everybody to the ribbon cutting on September 3rd.
Are we still on budget on this one?
Yes, we are.
Director Mack.
Yeah, and for clarification, just so the public knows, this has been reviewed, and the change orders are reviewed also by Director Geary separately, and there's a metrics that we look at, which is 5, 10, or 15% over, and that this is well under.
Yeah.
I can't remember. You have.
I don't have the dollar figure. We have still ample room in our contingency, and yes, we go over these in detail. The project team does with it. For Director Geary is fulfilling that role right now, and then they're also obviously talked about in Ops Committee as well.
Director Pinkham.
On one of the change orders, delete fire shutter, so it looks like it's saving us almost $6,000. Was it not needed, or what?
Yeah.
Just curious, what is the fire shutter analysis?
I believe it's part of the separation system that's involved in the fire code. I don't know exactly what a fire shutter is, but it's, since there was enough remodeling inside the school, it was probably an extra component that was taken out of the system.
And if you come to the Lincoln ribbon cutting, you can ask
Yeah. Yeah.
Richard Best,
Where-
because I think Richard Best knows everything about every school in this
Ask
district.
him, I think you needed a fire shutter over there.
And I'll pay money to watch. Thank you. I want to ping off of what both Chief Podesta and Chair Mack said. Jill Geary, who is not with us tonight, our director, took it upon herself to read every change order on all of our capital projects as a volunteer basis, and with her legal background and her sharp eye, props, and props. And this is not a lazy board, people. As you see, Director Pinkham often catches the errors, etc., and I'm proud to be a part of it. Moving on, number 10, Bex 5, in distress school grant, approval of 4 actions related to the West Woodland Modernization and Addition Project. This came before OPS August 15th for approval. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to enter into an architectural and engineering AE contract with McGranahan as architects in the amount of $1,638,228 plus reimbursable expenses not to exceed $25,000. Authorize the superintendent to accept and obligate 2017 Distress School Grant DSG funds in the amount of $6 million. Allow transfer of $2.5 million from the K-3 class size reduction grant to West Woodland Elementary School renovation and addition project, and allow transfers of $2.6 million from BEX 5 program contingency to the West Woodland Elementary School renovation and addition project. Take it away.
Again, this is to set up the initial architectural contract to begin work on the West Woodland modernization. That's a project that's going to go into construction June of 2020, and will have construction costs of roughly $13 million. The other financial aspects are assembling the budget for the project. So this is kicking off a piece of work, and hiring the architect to help us design the changes that we're going to make to the building.
Questions, comments, concerns? Director Mack.
No, just a big thank you to, again, the capital team and folks for finding ways to fix issues in our buildings with limited funding and cobbling these different funds together for this one in specific, because it wasn't on X5 and is still something that's incredibly needed. So,
And don't thanks also go out to the legislature for the distress schools grants?
Thanks go to the legislature. Thanks go to our team that put those grant applications together. And yes, we have broad interest, as we've gotten from voters here and from the state.
Okay, and making this fit, allowing transfer from $2.5 million from the K-3 class size reduction. Help me out with that, because anytime I see money going away from K-3 class size reduction, my initial cynical mind goes to bristle.
Well, and I would have to do a little bit further research, and we can when we bring this back for action, into where those savings came from. But we, with help from the operations committee, jealously guard our reserves and try to make savings along the way. So we need to, with whether it's a grant or levy funds, we always need to deliver the original scope. And but once there are savings, when that's done, we move money around to see if we can add value elsewhere.
Okay, can you update us on
Sure,
action on that one,
we can
please?
bring you detail when we come back for action
Perfect.
on what that is.
Director Pinkham, please.
Thank you. So for this modernization and addition project for West Woodland, what's the anticipated budget for this? Because to me, this is just moving almost $12 million over there, but what was the budget for this project?
The anticipated construction budget is $13 million.
Okay. Yeah, because one thing I guess just kind of quash, under the purpose at least, maybe if we can add the total there, because I had to scroll down a while. Okay, how much does that add up to? But eventually down on the fiscal impact, it shows us the total amount.
Sure.
Could we put that total amount also up in the purpose?
Absolutely. Just to be clear, this action does the financial shifting in the background, but it's really only authorizing us to spend the 1.6 for the architect.
I appreciate that, but it looks like there's 4 or 5 different.
No,
and
there are a lot of moving parts in this bar.
Our taxpayers
I
are
understand it.
cynical, so we want to be as transparent as
No.
we possibly can be. Okay, last item, number 11, Beck Spore, Resolution 2019-20-3. Final acceptance of contract P5116 with Rhine Demolition LLC for the Wing Luke Elementary School Replacement Phase 1 project. This came before OPS August 15th for approval. Approval of this item would adopt Resolution 2019-20-3 as attached to the Board Action Report and accept the work performed under contract P5116 with Rhine Demolition LLC for the Wing Luke Elementary Replacement Phase 1 project as final. Take it away, Chief Podesta.
This is finalizing a piece of work. We had a demolition contract to demolish the former Wing Luke building so we can build a new one, and that work is complete and is complete to our satisfaction. So this allows us to close the contract and make the final payments to the contractor.
Comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 8:18 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And happy start of schools next week.